standing before the audience of 35,000 people at Dadar in 1936. Baba Sahib is making a very long argument in favor of why conversion, what way emancipation, and he is very logically laying out the foundation for the future conversion movement. And he has been trying to explain in the beginning various aspects of conversion, and broadly he says that there is a lack of power, there is no strength in the community, which is a prime requisite to have power. So he states very clearly that the strengths which are lacking in the community are of three types: manpower, wealth, and mental strength. And he very arguably proves that these three strengths are not present in the community. And because these strengths are not present in the community, he opines that those strengths have to be brought from outside. Those strengths have to be brought from outside. And then he looks into the spiritual aspect of conversion. What is the spiritual need to convert? Because here too he has been explaining the material needs or the material aspects of the conversion. But now here he is trying to clearly spell out the spiritual aspects of conversion. So he begins naturally with the definition of religion. So he says, what can be the most meaningful and agreeable definition of religion to all? So in the 6 words, he gives the definition of the religion. That which governs people is religion. And he says that he has not defined this. It is not his definition. So this definition is coming from Mr. Tilak, the foremost leader of the Sanatani Hindus. Himself is the author of this definition. So he says that the religion is that which governs people. So he says that though he has not defined it, he has accepted this definition for the sake of argument. So let us, for the sake of argument, take on Tilak's definition that religion is something which governs people. So let's accept it for the sake of argument. So religion means the rules imposed for the maintenance of society. And he says, although this definition realistically or logically appears to be correct, it does not disclose or clarify the nature of rules which govern society, because we have seen that there is a very important word in the definition of the religion which Dr. Ambedkar has taken for the sake of the argument, and that is the rules. The question still remains as to what should be the nature of rules which govern society. This question is more important than that of definition. So more than definition, what is important really is to understand the pith of rules which govern the society, or the nature of rules which govern the society. So what should be the nature of real religion? And while deciding this question about the nature of real religion, another question naturally follows: what should be the relation between a man and society? What should be the relationship between the man and the larger society? Because if we are talking about something that governs people, we are naturally talking about a society and the individuals in the society. So he says that there are 3 answers to these questions. What is the relationship between a man and society? There are 3 postulates. So the first postulate is the ultimate goal of society is to achieve happiness for individuals. So that is the first postulate. The ultimate goal of the society is to achieve happiness for the individual. The second postulate is society exists for development of the inherent qualities and energies of man and help him to develop himself. That is the second one. The first is what? The ultimate goal of society is to achieve happiness for individual. That is the first postulate. The second one is society exists for development of the inherent qualities and energies of man and then help him to develop this himself. And the third one, the chief object of social organization is not the development or happiness of the individual but the creation of an ideal society. So according to the social philosophers, these are the three aspects of what is the nature of real religion and how it goes on to define the relationship between a man or an individual and a society. So there can be three postulates. Number one is the goal of the society is to achieve happiness for individual. Now this particular postulate is not present in Hindu religion. Nor the second. Society exists for development of the inherent qualities and energies of man and help him to develop himself. Nor the third. The chief object of social organization, not the development or happiness of the individual but the creation of an ideal society. All these three postulates have no place in Hindu religion. There is no place for an individual in Hindu religion. Hindu religion does not teach how an individual should behave with another individual. Baba Sahib goes on saying that a religion which does not recognize the individual is not personally acceptable to me. Although society is necessary for the individual, mere social welfare cannot be the ultimate goal of religion. Now this is very close to what happens when people talk in terms of the social welfare. They have some ideas of the social welfare and they try to impose those ideas on others. So imposition of our ideas about the social welfare on the people who have no such conception of the social welfare might in a longer term kill the individuality of the people. Now this is a very strong statement, but in a way what Dr. Baba Ambedkar is proposing here is this, that the individual is a part of the society and the relation with society is not like the body and its organ or the cart and its wheel. So in a very concrete metaphor of body and its parts and the cart and its wheel, Baba Sahib has very clearly separated the individuals and the society. Because society is not just the lump of the people together. There has to be some kind of relationship between the individuals and the laws or the rules as to how individuals should behave with another individuals. So it's very in-depth sort of seeing into the nature of Hindu religion. It's not opposing the religion for the sake of opposition, but it's from the standpoint of the individual as to how it suppresses the individuality. And this is a very important section which Baba Sahib has elaborated. We can understand that he is talking in front of 35,000 people and he is making very subtle and very deep arguments. So he has to clarify whatever he says further. So he further clarifies the relationship between the society and the individual. What is the relationship between the society and the individuals. And of course, he has to speak in terms of the concrete terms, in terms of very real sort of accessible language. So what he says, unlike the drop of water that merges in its existence with the ocean in which it drops, man does not lose his entity in the society in which he lives. So if you put a drop in the ocean, the drop loses its identity. But it's not such a case, such is not the case with the man. He doesn't lose his identity, his entity. Man's life is independent. Man's life is independent. They are like automaton or self-motivated entities. He is born not for the service of the society but for his self-development. So he is not there just to serve the abstract society. He is not there just to serve the abstract society, but he is there for his self-development. For this reason alone, in developed countries, one man cannot enslave another. Because one man is not slave to another man. So the underlying argument is very clear that one man is not slave to another man. All people are independent. We will go very slowly because this is a very sort of subtle argumentation. A religion in which an individual has no importance is not acceptable to me. I don't accept a religion which does not recognize the individuality. I do not accept a religion in which one class alone has a right to gain knowledge, another has only a right to use arms, the third one to trade, and the fourth one only to serve. Everybody needs knowledge, everybody needs arms, everybody wants money. The religion which forgets this and with an intention to educate a few keeps the rest in darkness is not a religion but a conspiracy to keep the people in mental slavery. This is a very self-explanatory statement. He says if this reasoning is acceptable to you or agreed upon, it is clear that you cannot develop yourself at all in the Hinduism. Because he has mentioned the three postulates and he says that those postulates have no scope in Hindu religion. There is no scope for individuality in Hindu religion. There is no scope for independent existence for the individual. Therefore he says that you cannot develop yourself at all in Hinduism. So he is telling his people that they can't develop themselves at all in the Hindu religion. And he says three factors are required for the uplift of an individual. So we are entering into the very core of the speech. He says three factors are very important for upliftment of an individual. They are liberty, equality and fraternity. Now this speech was delivered in 1936 and he is saying that three factors are very important for development of an individual: liberty, equality and fraternity. Can you say by experience that any of these factors exist for you in the Hinduism? Do you have fraternity in Hindu religion? Do you have equality in Hindu religion? Do you have liberty in Hindu religion? So for the development of the individual, these three factors are very crucial, absence of which will lead to degradation of the individual. So what are the three factors? Liberty, equality and fraternity. So here the word fraternity is translated as sympathy, but we will use the word fraternity. So there is no sympathy in the Hindu religion. There is no fraternity for the untouchables in the Hindu religion. If one looks at the relations of the neighboring Hindus and the untouchables of a village, none can say that they are brothers. They can rather be described as two opposing armies at war camp. The Hindus do not have the slightest affinity towards you as they have towards Muslims. They consider Muslims closer to them than you. The Hindus and Muslims are helpful to each other in local boards, legislative councils, and in business. But is there a single instance of such sympathetic consideration being shown towards you by the caste Hindus? On the contrary, they always cultivate hatred against you in their minds. What dreadful effects this hatred has produced can be heard from those who have had an occasion to go to the court of justice or to the police for help. Does any one of you believe that the court will give you justice or the police act rightly? And if not, what is the reason for cultivating such sense of hatred against you? In my opinion, there is only one reason for such disbelief. You believe that the Hindus will not use their power rightly because they lack sympathy for you. And if it is so, what is the use of living in the midst of such hatred? Is there equality for you in Hinduism? Of course, there is no equality in Hinduism. So he goes on argumenting, and he says that there is no equality in Hindu religion, and he gives a couple of examples which will make sense to people. He says that some of the aspects of their religion, they try to claim that they have the principles like God is all pervading according to the principles enunciated in the Upanishad. It may be pointed out that religion and science are two different things. I think this is a very important paragraph. It is necessary to consider whether a particular theory is a principle of science or the teaching of religion. It's very important whether it's a science or it's a religion, teaching of religion. That God is all pervading is a principle of science and not of religion. How do you know that the God is all pervading? Because your books mention that. You can't claim that God is all pervading. You have to use science in order to understand whether there is any all pervading principle. So he says that that's the department of science. The principle of God being omnipresent is not teaching of religion but a principle of science. This statement is supported by the fact that the Hindus do not act according to the above principle. On the contrary, if the Hindus insist on saying that the omnipresence of God is not the principle of philosophy but the basic principle of their religion, I would simply say that nowhere in the world is such a meanness found as it exists among the Hindus. They claim that God is all pervading. But what happens when it comes to really applying it? The Hindus can be ranked among those cruel people whose utterances and act are poles apart. They have this ram on their tongue and a knife under their armpit. And in Marathi it was muh mein ram, bagal mein churi. So it's very contradictory, the way they talk about their metaphysics, the way they talk about all pervading God, but the way they behave, they are exactly opposite and they are poles apart. So Baba says in a very strong language, which we have seen put in terms of the banners in that pandal. So some of the very important words I will repeat. Do not keep company with those who believe that the God is omnipresent but treat men worse than animals. They are hypocrites. Do not keep contact with those who feed ants with sugar but kill men by prohibiting them from drinking water. They are hypocrites. So after talking about how the Hindu religion lacks fraternity and equality, Baba Sahib goes on to the next level of freedom. Have you any freedom in Hindu religion? His question is, have you any freedom in Hindu religion? He says some people might say that you have a freedom of trade guaranteed by law like any other citizen. You are also said to have got the personal liberty like others. Do you have any freedom in Hindu religion? You will have to think deeply over such statement to see whether they really carry any meaning. What is good in saying you have freedom of trade to a person who is not allowed by the society to do any other business rather than an ancestral one? So on the legal side you can say that, oh, you are free to do any business, but what is the use of such a statement? It doesn't carry any meaning. You have freedom of trade to a person who is not allowed by the society to do any other business rather than an ancestral one. What is the use of telling someone such words? You are at liberty to enjoy your property. Nobody else will touch your money, when all doors to acquiring property are closed to him. To tell a person who is treated as unfit for entry into any service due to the defilement attached to him by birth and under whom working is most contemptuous for others, that he has a right to serve, is to make mockery of him. So you have a very strong law, very enlightened law, but the society is not following those laws. And if you are saying that our legal principles are solid, Dr. Ambedkar says that it's like making the mockery of people if you don't change your society. So you have good laws, but your society is not up to that mark. It's like making the mockery of the people. The law may guarantee various rights, but only those can be called real rights which you are permitted by the society to exercise. Because ultimately the society is the relationship between the individuals. The state can act as a referee whether the individual rights are secured or not, whether the private citizens are behaving with each other on the right basis or not. So it's a very pithy substance statement. The law may guarantee various rights, but only those can be called real rights which you are permitted by the society to exercise. The law guarantees to the untouchables the right to wear decent clothes, but the Hindus do not allow them to put on these clothes. What is the use of this right? So many cases even in the present India, so many good laws, but the society is completely opposed to those laws. The right which is guaranteed by law but is opposed by the society is of no use at all. The untouchables are in more need of social liberty than that which is guaranteed by law. So long as you do not achieve social liberty, whatever freedom is provided by law to you is of no avail. Some people might advise you that you have physical freedom. Of course, you can go anywhere, you can speak anything you wish, subject to restrictions imposed by law. But what is the use of such freedom? A man has a body as well as a mind. Mere physical freedom is of no use. Though the freedom is guaranteed by law, but the minds are not free. Really speaking, what is meant by physical freedom to a man? It means he is free to act according to his own free will. He is free to act according to his own free will. That is the freedom. A prisoner is chained and made free. What is the principle underlying this? The principle is that he should be free to act according to his own free will, and he should not be able to make the maximum use of the abilities. He should be able to make the maximum use of the abilities he possesses. But what is the use of such freedom of a man whose mind is not free? The freedom of mind is the real freedom. Now this whole paragraph is worth reading. A person whose mind is not free, though not in chains, is a slave. One whose mind is not free, though not in prison, is a prisoner. One whose mind is not free, though alive, is dead. Freedom of mind is proof of one's existence. What is the proof then to judge that the flame of mental freedom is not extinguished from a person? Of whom can we say that his mind is free? I call him free who with an awakened consciousness realizes his rights, responsibilities and duties. He is not slave of circumstances and is always bent upon changing them in his favor. I call him free, one who is not a slave of usage, customs and traditions, or of teachings because they have come down from his ancestors, whose flame of religion is not extinguished, I call him a free man. He who has not surrendered himself, who does not act on the teachings of others, who does not believe in anything unless it is examined critically in the light of the cause and effect theory, is a free man. Who is always prepared to protect his rights, who is not afraid of public criticism, who has enough intellect and self-respect so as not to become a tool in the hands of others. I call such a man as a free man. Who does not lead his life under the directions of others, who carves out his own aim of life according to his own reasoning and decides for himself as to how and in what way his life should be led, I call him a free man. In short, a man who is his own master, him alone I consider a free man. Now if we look at, or if we just imagine what effect this paragraph or this series of sentences might have had on the people who were listening to this speech. This series of sentences might have had a very deep impact on the people seated there, because Dr. Ambedkar is talking about very deep concepts but in a very accessible terms. They are very highest principles of life. Without them the individuals cannot really progress. So he says, in the light of my above observations, whatever I spelled out in front of you, Dr. Ambedkar says, in the light of the above observations, are you free? This question is, are you free? Have you any freedom to carve your own aims? In my opinion, not only you have any freedom, but you are worse than slaves. Your slavery has no parallel. In the Hindu religion, none can have freedom of speech. Everyone who lives in Hindu religion must surrender his freedom of speech. He must act according to the Vedas. If the Vedas do not support the actions, instructions must be sought from Smritis. And if the Smritis fail to provide any instructions, he must follow the footsteps of great men. So where is your freedom? Where is your right to choose? In Hinduism, conscience, religion, thoughts have neither any importance nor any scope. It's quite true that all the Hindus are living under a state of mental slavery. It's not just you, but all the Hindus, whoever believes in the external power, whoever believes in the words of the sacred texts, they are the mental slaves, because they are dictated by the books. They are not dictated by their conscience, they are not dictated by their religions, they are not dictated by their will. In view of this, the Hinduism has marked your progress from two sides. It has sacked your mental freedom and made you slaves. It has sacked your mental freedom and made you slaves. In the outer world also, it has doomed you to the condition of a slave. If you want freedom, you must change your religion. If you want sympathy, you must change your religion. If you want equality, you must change your religion. If you want freedom, you must change your religion. And he says that it's very difficult to abolish the caste among the untouchable classes. It's very difficult to really annihilate the caste. So the opponent of the movement of eradication of the untouchability criticize on the ground that Mahars and Marks do not dine together. Both these castes do not touch the scavengers and practice untouchability against them. What right these people have to expect from high castes the non-observance of untouchability when they themselves practice casteism and untouchability amongst them? This question is always raised. The untouchables are generally advised to abolish caste and untouchability from amongst them and then come up for redress. We all have to accept that there is a truth in this argument. There is a truth in this argument. But the allegation made in this is false. It cannot be denied that the caste included in the untouchables practice casteism and some untouchability. But it is equally false to say that they are anyway responsible for this crime. They are not responsible for this crime. The casteism and the untouchability have originated not from the untouchables but from the high caste Hindus. They have laid down the practice of the casteism and the untouchability. The lesson of observing casteism and untouchability has been put in practice by high caste Hindus. And if this is true, the responsibility of this tradition of the casteism and untouchability falls on the caste Hindus and not on the untouchables. The lesson of observing casteism and untouchability has been put in practice by high caste Hindus. The author says that though there is untouchability among the scheduled caste or among the untouchables, because they are not originated that practice, moral responsibility to do away with casteism and the practice of untouchability lies with those who have created this practice. So he is trying to tell his people that they should not fall prey to the false propaganda that they should put their house in order first, because the disorder was created not by them but by the people. And the people who created a disorder cannot argue that first the people who have been disordered should be ordered first. To talk of annihilating caste while living in the Hinduism is like talking of changing the poison into nectar. In short, so long as we remain in the religion which teaches a man to treat other man as filthy, the sense of discrimination on account of caste, which is deeply rooted in our minds, cannot be abolished. For annihilating the caste and the untouchability from among the untouchables, change of religion is the only antidote. So if we look at the image, that if you are trying to change really from inside, nothing is going to happen. You have to come out of that particular context. So it's like if you are trying to act within that container, you are not making any change, but you are playing with the old rules. You are repeating the same pattern. So what is important is to really come out of that system and have new rules of the game. So if you start playing within that game and within the rules of that game, you only perpetuate that game, but you really don't come out of that game of caste. So what is important is to really leave or quit playing that game of caste. So further he says that you don't object to changing the names, because there was a practice of changing the names. The Mahars called themselves Chokha Meras. Or Harijans, the Gandhi gave them the name Harijan. He said that you accept the change of name, and he says that changing a religion is like changing a name. Name of a religion followed by the change of name will be more beneficial to you. So you accept the change of name. What is wrong in accepting the change of religion? It's the same thing. So he says, I ask you therefore why you should not change your name permanently by changing your religion. This is a very strong argument. And then we will look at the opponent's arguments, the way the opponent's arguments against the conversion. Some Hindus have argued that a religion is not a matter of enjoyment. A religion cannot be changed as we change our clothes every day. You wish to leave this Hindu religion and embrace another one. Do you then think that your ancestors who clung to this religion for a long period were fools? Now this is the argument of the opponents. Do you think that your ancestors who cling to this religion for such a long period, were they fools? Some so-called wise men have raised this issue, and the wise man in this particular question is undoubtedly Gandhi. I do not find any substance in this objection. A foolish alone will say that one has to adhere to one's religion because it is that of his ancestors. Only a fool will say that they have to adhere to the religion of their ancestors. No wise man will accept such a proposition. Those who argue that the ancestor religion should not be changed, seem that they have not read the history at all. So he says, I ask you therefore why you should not change your name permanently by changing your religion. This is a very strong argument. And then we will look at the opponent's arguments, the way the opponent's arguments against the conversion. Some Hindus have argued that a religion is not a matter of enjoyment. A religion cannot be changed as we change our clothes every day. You wish to leave this Hindu religion and embrace another one. Do you then think that your ancestors who cling to this religion for a long period were fools? Now this is the argument of the opponents. Do you think that your ancestors who cling to this religion for such a long period, were they fools? They have not read the history. The ancient Aryan religion was called Vedic religion, in which three distinct characteristics, beef eating, drinking wine, and merrymaking were the part of the religion of the day. So in India in the past, there was a religion called Vedic religion. And what was the part of the religion? Drink wine, eat beef, and merrymaking. Thousands of people followed it in India, and even now some Brahmins dream of going back to it. Thousands of people in India that time followed this religion. They drank soma, they ate cows, and they had fun. That was the religion. And Dwasa says that even today some Brahmins are thinking about going back to that ideal of the past. If the ancient religion alone is to be adhered to, why did people of India renounce Hinduism and accept Buddhism? Why did they become Buddhist? Because then it followed by the Buddhist India. Why did they renounce the Vedic religion and accept the Jain religion? It cannot be denied that our ancestors lived in the ancient religion, but I cannot say that they remained there voluntarily. The Chaturvarna system prevailed in this country for a fairly long time. In this system, the Brahmins were permitted to learn, Kshatriyas to fight, Vaishyas to earn property, and Shudras to serve. This way of life was the rule of the day. In this way, the Shudras had no education, no property, no arms. Those your ancestors who were thus forced to live in impoverished and defenseless condition, no man with sense will say that they accepted this religion voluntarily. They haven't accepted the Shudrahood voluntarily. It is forced on them. Thus this Hindu religion is not the religion of our ancestors, but it was a slavery thrusted upon them. It was not the religion of our ancestors. It was a slavery thrusted upon them. Our ancestors had no means to fight this slavery, and hence they could not revolt. They were compelled to live in this religion. They were forced to follow those codes. Nobody can blame them for this selflessness. Rather, anyone will pity them. But now nobody can force any type of slavery upon the present generation. They have all sorts of freedom. By availing such freedom, if they do not free themselves, one will have to call them most regretfully as being most mean, slavish and dependent people to have lived on earth. What an encouraging note that Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar is making here. And he says that the Hindus are bent upon improving the Hindu religion. Some Hindus are bent upon improving the Hindu religion. Whatever opinion anybody may possess about the Hindu social reformers, I personally have a nausea for them. I have much experience of them and I feel disgust about these half-witted people. When I hear such slogans shouted by these Hindu social reformers, I recollect the efforts made by the American white people to emancipate the American Negroes. Years ago, now I am going to read this very thorough. Years ago, the condition of the Negroes in America was just the same as those of the untouchables in India. 1936. This speech was given in 1936. So just pay attention to what I am going to read now. The difference between the two was that the slavery of Negroes had the sanction of the law, while your slavery is the creation of religion. Some American reformers were trying for the abolition of slavery of the Negroes. But can the Hindu reformers be compared with those white social reformers in America who emancipated the Negroes? The white American reformers fought battles in war with kith and kin for emancipation of Negroes. They killed thousands of whites who defended the slavery and also sacrificed their own blood for this cause. When we read these incidents through the pages of history, we are compelled to say that the social reformers in America and India are incomparable. And then he utters a phrase in Marathi, in Hindi, Kaha Raja, Kaha Pot Raja. Says, Kaha Raja, Kaha Pot Raja. These so-called benefactors of the untouchables of India, called reformers, need to be asked, are you prepared to fight a civil war with your Hindu brethren, like the whites in America who fought with their white brothers for the cause of the Negroes? And if not, what are these tall talks of reforms for? the greatest of the Hindus who claims to fight for the cause of the untouchables is Mahatma Gandhi. To what extent can he go? To what extent Mahatma Gandhi can go? Mahatma Gandhi, who pilots the non-violent agitation against the British government, is not prepared even to hurt the feelings of the Hindus, the oppressors of the untouchables. It is a very important statement. He is not willing to launch a satyagraha against them. He is not even prepared to take legal action against the Hindus. I do not see any good of such reformers. And he says that the fault lies with the touchables alone. There is no fault with the untouchables. Because the advice which is given to the untouchables is this: brothers, live clean, educate yourselves, stand on your own feet, etc. Really speaking, if anybody is to be blamed, it is the caste Hindus alone. It is the caste Hindus who commit this wrong. And with this illustration, I will finish today's talk. This is a very important story. Pay heed to this story, the way Babasaheb Ambedkar has used the teaching method in order to show the hypocrisy of the touchables caste Hindus. In fact, he has given the couple of illustrations from the history of the world. I remember to have read about a conversation between an American and an English soldier during the last World War. So he is talking about the First World War. Because in 1936, the Second World War was not fought yet. So he is talking about the World War I. He is saying that I remember to have read conversation between an American and an English soldier during the World War I. I find it most appropriate at this juncture. For how long the war should be continued was the subject of their discussion. What was the subject of their discussion between the American and the French, between the American and the English soldier? You have to understand that the Americans, French and the British were fighting together. They were the allies. They were fighting together. Keep this fact in mind. For how long the war should be continued was the subject of their discussion. In reply to a question of the American, the Englishman said with great pride, and the English and the French had strong enmity in the history. They fought wars, they envied each other. So, in reply to a question of the American, the Englishman said with great pride, "We shall fight the war till the last Frenchman is killed." When the Hindu social reformers proclaim that they shall fight to the last for the cause of the untouchables, it means that they propose to fight till the last untouchable dies. Now, this is a very important illustration, the way Babasaheb Ambedkar has explained a very complex sort of psychology of the Hindu reformers. This is the meaning, as I understand, of their proclamation. It should not be difficult for you to decide that one who fights for the cause at the cost of the lives of others cannot be expected to win the battle. You have to sacrifice yourself in the battle. Here, the Englishman is trying to sacrifice the Frenchman in order to win the battle. He is not ready to die himself in order to win the battle. Same is the case with the Hindu social reformer. Let the untouchable die in the battle. We don't want to die. So what kind of a battle is this? Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar questions. So he says, if we are to die in our struggle for freedom, what is the use of fighting at wrong place? To reform the Hindu society is neither our aim nor our field of action. To reform the Hindu society is neither our aim nor our field of action. Our aim is to gain freedom for us. We have nothing to do with anything else. If we can gain our freedom by the conversion, why should we shoulder the responsibility of reforming the Hindu society? It's a very important statement. And why should we sacrifice our vitality, strength and wealth for that? None should misunderstand the main object of our movement as being Hindu social reform. Our movement is not for Hindu social reform. Our movement is for freedom. Our movement is for emancipation. It's not for the reformation of Hinduism. The principal object of our movement is only to achieve the social freedom for the untouchables. It is equally true that this freedom cannot be secured without conversion. And then he talks about various attitudes of the caste Hindus as to even when they have the will to reform, they are confined to their own caste. So he cites the case of the Saraswat Brahmins as to how they do the charity, but their charity is limited just to their caste. How the Kayasthas do the charity, but their charity work is limited to their own caste. And he goes on talking about the attitude of the social reforms focused on their caste of the caste Hindus.